when John Smith was fighting with two guns in his hands. Newton's third law. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction force. Hand and gun, gun and hand. No acceleration on the gun means no force, which is untrue. A minuscule acceleration, invisible to eye, as expressed in this scene, would prove the gun to be very high in mass. An inaccurate representation of pistols. Lack of kickback is inaccurate. When the gun is fired, a force should act on the bullet to propel it forward. The Newton's second law is known that forces come in action-reaction pairs, which would force the gun to recoil back as the bullet is shot out. The bullet should then accelerate when there is force, F equals ma. The bullet has smaller mass than the gun, and therefore a greater acceleration.
When John metered her speeding car through the window, she just broke out the car onto the road unharmed. Specific physics concepts involve law of interaction, law of acceleration, force, speed, and velocity. Violation/misconception. Jane immediately recovering from the jump out of the car onto the floor. She should experience inertia and harsher, more major injuries from the force of impact from the car to the road. How to correct the violation/misconception. To correct it, she could lessen the speed of her car or put it to a complete stop before going out. This way, she will sustain no injury from the velocity of the car as she crashes out, instead of her sustaining injury from the force of the impact of the floor.
Description: John threw a bomb on the opponent's car and it was exploded while their car was on top. Specific physics concepts involved: explosions, energy, momentum conservation. Violation: their car did not experience any change in velocity after the bomb was thrown between the two cars. How will you correct the violation or misconception? Because of the chemical energy from the explosive, John and Jane's car should have made it more obvious that it experienced a change in velocity as a bomb exploded on the car behind them.
Jane jumps out of the moving car when her husband John crashes through the window and into the back seat. Speed, velocity. Even when there was no person driving the car, it continued to move in the same speed forward. The speed of the car should have decreased or stopped after a while due to there being no driver, no one moving the car forward.
When John Smith went inside his office and sat down to click the remote control that allows the window to shut down and prevent light to pass through. Opaque, light wave allows no light to pass through it. Conductors, heat and temperature, materials that easily conduct heat. Thermal expansion, heat and temperature. Tendency of matter to change in shape, area, and volume in response to the change in temperature through heat transfer. Opaque is one that transmits none of the radiation that reaches it. It also is the scattering of light in a certain material. Higher scattering of light, the more light can pass through an object when he shut down the window. Conductors are materials that permit electrons to flow freely from particle to particle. Heat in the metal. Metal is a conductor of heat. Thermal expansion. Metal expands when heated because an increase in temperature is actually an increase in the vibration of atoms that compose the metal, and this vibration forces the atoms to slightly apart.
Scene description. When John and Jane are teamed up, they plot to kidnap Benjamin Dance. While John is in the tunnel, he is able to communicate with Jane through microwaves in their communications device, and while Jane is able to see the things John can due to the dark through infrared vision. Specific physics concepts involve EM waves, microwaves in their communications device, and infrared waves for their night vision. Explanation on how the physics concepts are applied in the scene. It shows the usage of EM waves in their situation. Microwaves are used in cell phones and other communications devices, and it's applied in this scene. They are able to communicate through the device using waves. At the same time, Jane is able to help John navigate through the dark tunnel which he himself can't see with the aid of night vision from infrared waves. The video John is taking is transformed into infrared so she can help him get through and warn him if any enemies are near. EM waves are properly used in this scene.
Description: the lasers from the opponent's guns were seen by both Jane and John from their window. Specific physics concepts involved: transparency, EM radiation, light amplification, coherence. Explanation on how the physics concepts are applied in the scene. Lasers pass through Jane and John's window because of transparency properties of glass. They saw it as lasers because lasers contain special properties such as coherence or the lockstep of troughs and crests, and light amplification in the form of radiation where electrons become excited.
Jane Smith and her coworkers are using computers in their workplace. EM waves, X-rays, UV, visible light. Computers have EM waves such as X-rays, which are produced inside a monitor CRT, which is cathode ray tube, and UV radiation, which is emitted in intensity lower than fluorescent lights and much lower than the sun. There are also visible lights, the intensity of which can be controlled by